All right, good evening. If I could get everybody's attention before we start our meeting tonight, I would like to welcome Jason Howard from Stone Creek Church to lead us in our invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and councilmen and women. If we could, let's bow our heads, please. So we come to you, Father, as we start out tonight on a beautiful night. Father, that we would just pray for the decisions to be made, for everything just to come under your authority. We know that this city has been flourishing, God. We know that your blessing is on it, and just that would continue, and the growth and just everything, Lord, within the city of Milton would continue to just give back and to be a city that's a model, not just for our surrounding communities, but also for the nation and even for the world. God, just thank you for the council men and women and for the mayor that you've given us and all the supporting staff of the city. And Father, that we just know that there would be, again, tonight and beyond, great decisions made. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, May 22nd, 2013 to order. If the city clerk would please call our roll and make some general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the May 20th, 2013 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Additionally, those attending the meeting who would like to provide a public comment either during the public hearing or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on an item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards were received by the city clerk staff prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided that such an individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within this chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Kuntz.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Burt Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Lance Large.
Here.
For the record, Councilmember Joe Longoria is absent. Tonight we are honored to have the Sons of the American Revolution lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please rise?
Thank you, and as always, it's an honor to have the Sons of the American Revolution here, as well as leading us in our pledge. So again, would like to welcome everybody here tonight. We appreciate you being here, and we will move forward. If our city clerk will please call the first item.
Our first item this evening is approval of meeting agenda. This is agenda item number 13-122.
Okay, I think we want to add an executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple of modifications tonight. The first, I'd ask you to consider to move the new business item until after reports and presentations. And the second is I'd like to add an executive session to discuss litigation and personnel.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so that's, you're going to add, we'll repeat that motion and then, what
To move the one item after reports and presentations in executive session, litigation personnel.
Okay. And where do you want to move that item?
I'd like the new business item to go right after reports and presentations.
Right after.
Yeah, and then before the zoning agenda.
Okay. Sure, Mr. Doyle would appreciate that. All right, anything else on the agenda? If not, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve the meeting agenda as prepared by staff with the modifications to move the new business item after reports and presentations, and to call it an executive session for the purpose of litigation and personnel.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Councilmember Delosk, a second by Councilmember Kuntz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Sudi, do we have any public comment tonight?
We do not have any general public comment, sir.
Okay. Then let's move on to our consent agenda.
Our first item under consent agenda this evening, approval of the May 6, 2013 regular City Council meeting minutes. This is agenda item number 13, 123. Next, approval of the financial statements for the period ending April 2013, agenda item number 13, 124. Our next item is approval of addendum number 1 to the professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Owens Environmental Design, LLC, for the Deerfield Park Design Services. Agenda item number 13, 125. Next, approval of an agreement between the City of Milton and Special Events Network, LLC, for the movies at the Family Fun Flicks and Flurries Summer Event Series on June 8th and 24th, 2013. Agenda item number 13, 126. Next, approval of an agreement between the City of Milton and France Construction Services, LLC, for fire station renovations. Agenda item number 13, 127. Our final consent item this evening is approval of the City of Milton's release of all copyright claims pertaining to the new Milton Business Alliance logo to the Milton Business Alliance. Agenda item number 13, 128.
Okay, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items as read by staff.
I'll second it.
Okay, I've got a motion for approval of the consent agenda from Councilmember Kuntz and a second from Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, let's move on to our reports and presentations.
Our first presentation this evening is a proclamation honoring Milton students who chose to serve their country in a military career. This is being presented by Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Thank you. In a few minutes, we'll be reading a proclamation recognizing Memorial Day in Milton. And the purpose of that is to remember those who have fallen in defense of our country. Approximately 1 to 2% of our population serves in the military. Tonight, we're going to read a proclamation recognizing those students who have chosen a career path in the military. This is the newest wave of the 1.5 to 2% who will be helping to defend our country, preserving the freedoms that the rest of us, the 98%, enjoy every day. Tonight we're honored to have in our audience the assistant principals from Milton High School and Cambridge High School, as well as the students that are being recognized for pursuing a military education. And I'll read off all of those right now, and then I'll read the proclamation. Immediately following the proclamation, I'd like to have all of those students come up to the podium here, along with council, and for photographs. From Milton High School, we have Assistant Principal Heidi Ballin, Noah Allen, Santiago Arenas, Jody Dockery, Joshua Douglas, Peter Fortunio, Jacqueline Grace Mahoney, and Kristen Ringwald. From Cambridge High School, Assistant Principal Jamie Dixon is with us, along with Colin Fallick, Abigail Higgins, Rayvon Moss, Christian Park, and Austin Smitherman. Whereas, this is a proclamation honoring Milton students who chose to serve their country in a military career. Whereas, one of the main responsibilities of our federal government is to provide for the national defense. And whereas, the branches of the United States military have a long and prestigious history of shaping and producing the finest young minds in America, producing not only soldiers, but also scholars, national leaders, and diplomats. And whereas every year, thousands of students across America choose to pursue both higher education and military service by attending U.S. military service academies, military universities, or enrolling in officer training programs. And whereas, in order to qualify for selection, these students must excel in academic, athletic, and leadership abilities. And whereas these students will be developed mentally, morally, and physically, and will be imbued with the highest ideals of duty and loyalty, and with the core values of honor, courage, and commitment before being commissioned as officers. And whereas, through their dedication, these students have displayed exemplary character by choosing to better serve their country, their community, their families, and themselves at a time in their lives when such an important choice is uncommon. And whereas Cambridge High School students, Colin Fallick will join the ROTC program at the University of North Georgia. Abigail Higgins will join the United States Marine Corps. Rayvon Moss will join the Army National Guard. Christian Park will join the Army Reserves, and Austin Smitherman will attend the ROTC Marines program at the University of Mississippi. Milton High School students, Noah Allen will attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. Santiago Arenas will join the Air Force. Jody Dockery will join the Navy. Joshua Douglas will join the Marines. Peter Fortunio will attend Georgia Military Academy. Jacqueline Mahoney will attend the United States Merchant Marine Academy. And Kristen Ringwald will go through officer training in the NROTC program at the University of Notre Dame.
Go Irish.
Now therefore, we, the mayor and city council of the city of Milton, hereby honor Milton students who choose to serve their country in a military career, given under our hand and seal of the city of Milton, Georgia, on this 20th day of May, 2013. So if you could ask council to come up, and all of the students that I've named off, and if there are any other students that have shown up since the proclamation was written, stand up and be recognized.
I have to say what an honor it is to be a part of this proclamation. With Councilmember Lusk's presentation to you guys, it's just hard to put into words how much we appreciate what you guys are going to do, as well as our other veterans and what they have done and served our country, and what a commitment and a sacrifice, and thanks to your parents. And just want to let you know that we all appreciate the fact that you guys are going to do work to protect us. And as Councilmember Lusk said, 98% of the population that you may never know, but it's just an honor to know that you guys are out there protecting us. So thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to our next proclamation.
Our next proclamation is honoring Milton Grows Green volunteers and sponsors for their support of the 2013 Earth Day Festival. This is being presented by Councilmember Matt Kuntz.
All right, thank you. Yeah, in kind of the same light, we as a city have two primary assets. The first is the talents of the people that we have in our community, and the second is the land that we are on. And Earth Day, in my mind, was a great combination of both of those working for each other. And when we had our Earth Day event a couple weeks ago, I thought it was fantastic. It was great being there. The rest of us as council were there, and we saw a lot. So this proclamation is really for those volunteers. So we are pleased as a city to issue proclamations to the hard-working Earth Day Committee of 4 that worked tirelessly for months to plan our 2013 Earth Day Festival for the community. Thanks to our volunteers, the event was bigger and better than ever, in the 4th annual Earth Day event with an estimated 1,400 people attending on a beautiful April Saturday. This volunteer group of 4 met regularly every 2 weeks for several months to plan the logistics at our new park, Friendship Community Park, to plan the entertainment, vendors, booths, crafts, games, educational signage, and the publicity. And we sincerely thank the Earth Day Festival co-chairs Kathy Johnson and Teresa Stickles for leading the group, and Jack Linden and all the tremendous legwork in planning the logistics, and Francia Linden for the expertise she provided with all the graphics, t-shirts, and the publicity. This event would not have been possible without the hard work and dedication of our volunteers. There were about 60 additional volunteers which helped with the event, but these 4 topped the list in terms of time and effort. So thanks, Kathy, Teresa, Jack, and Francia. Great job. In addition to the volunteers that made this event possible, the city also would like to recognize with the proclamation the sponsors of this event. The city did not have to fund a large part of Earth Day event thanks to the contributions from our businesses and our community partners. Your generosity helped to put on a first-class event that Milton was very proud of, with a free rock wall, hamster balls, kids, crafts, and games, entertainment, and much, much more. And if I ever saw anybody in one of those hamster balls, those were pretty entertaining, I'll tell you that. I almost got in one myself, but I brought my suit, so I couldn't. So thank you particularly to the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, who was our presenting sponsor, which helped to get the event launched. Next, our entertainment sponsors, Creative Solar and USA Walmart, stepped up to bring live entertainment along with a solar-powered sound system to the green event. And lastly, our green advocate sponsors, which we had many, donated both funding and in-kind services, which were very much appreciated by the community. And at this time, I'd like to read the proclamation, which lists all of the sponsors. And when I'm finished, I'd like to call all the Earth Day sponsors up to the front for the copy and to thank you from the City Council. So, whereas building a community and hometown takes committed, caring volunteers, and whereas Milton Grows Green, founded in 2008, has worked tirelessly to preserve and enhance the city of Milton's rural character, encourage appropriate and sustainable growth for present and future generations, identify standards and incentives for greener, more sustainable building practices, promote sound public policy by providing research and information on practices that protect our natural resources, develop a framework for evaluating and recommending and or implementing appropriate initiatives, and raise awareness and influence personnel choices in ways that improve the health and quality of life for the residents. And whereas, among Milton Grows Green's most popular and enduring projects is the Milton Earth Day Festival, which just celebrated its 4th year with record attendance at Friendship Community Park. And whereas what began as a small festival just 4 years ago has blossomed into a well-attended and cherished event based on the work and dedication of a small group of committed volunteers. And whereas this group, including Kathy Johnson and Teresa Stickles, event co-chairs Jack Linden, Logistics, and Francia Linden, Communications, deserves to be honored for their many hours of effort and care so that the community can enjoy a fun and free festival. And whereas the event's many sponsors, including Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Comfort Zone, Creative Solar, Home Depot, Lowe's, Macaroni Kid, Milton Fields Green Cemetery, Natural Foods Warehouse, Net Zero USA, Peggy Still School of Music, Renaissance Bank, Roswell Pediatric Center, PC, Scottsdale Farms, Thrive Chiropractic Wellness Center, Walmart, Verizon, Chattahoochee Nature Center, and Waste Management should be recognized for their support. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, hereby honor the volunteers of Milton Grows Green and the sponsors of the Earth Day Festival for their commitment to Milton's residents, given under our hand and seal of the City of Milton, Georgia, on this 20th day of May, 2013. Now, if all of those people I talked about are here, please join us up at front, please. The council would join us as well, that would be great.
And I'd just like to add, too, another thing that I'm very proud that we're able to do is to honor our volunteers and all the things that they do. So that's kind of what puts our cities apart with other cities and what I think makes Milton a better place to live. So we appreciate all the hard work and everything that our volunteers do. So it makes a big difference. So thank you very much. And we'll move on to our next proclamation.
Our final proclamation this evening is a proclamation recognizing Memorial Day. This is being presented by Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Thank you. This coming Monday, 27th of May at 10 o'clock, we'll have our 6th annual Memorial Day ceremony here behind City Hall. And I want to invite everybody to come over Each year it has grown bigger, and I think we have a first-class ceremony. We unfortunately compete with Roswell, who draws thousands down there, but I think we're in a class equal to what Roswell provides. I'd like to present this proclamation to the Sons of the American Revolution, Piedmont Chapter. Would you please come forward? It's a proclamation for Memorial Day. Whereas Memorial Day was first officially proclaimed on May 5th, 1868, by General John Logan in his General Order Number 11, and in 1968, by Act of Congress, it was determined that the holiday will be observed on the last Monday in May. And whereas, from the opening battles of the American Revolution, through the turmoil of the Civil War, to the World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, to the Persian Gulf, and today's operations in the War on Terror in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all around the world, the members of our military have built a tradition of honorable and faithful service. And whereas, as we observe Memorial Day, we remember the more than 1 million Americans who have died to preserve our freedom, the more than 140,000 citizens who were prisoners of war, and all those who were declared missing in action. We also honor our veterans for their dedication to America and their sacrifice. And whereas we have honor and privileges of living in a free country, and Georgia has a rich history of great leaders who died fighting for our great nation. Today, all who wear the uniform of the United States are serving at a crucial hour in history, and each has answered a great call to serve our nation on the front lines of freedom. Let us pray for the safety and strength of our troops and for God's blessing on them and their families, and for those who have lost loved ones. And whereas on this Memorial Day, we honor our fallen soldiers and their commitment to our country and their legacy of patriotism and sacrifices of many men and women who answered the nation's call to duty and fought with honor and valor, and in the end, gave the ultimate sacrifice to safeguard the rights of all Americans. And whereas by giving their lives in this cause of freedom, these heroes have protected and inspired all Americans, and we are truly grateful for their service. And whereas the citizens of Milton join with people across the nation in remembrance of those who died while courageously serving their country during war. Now therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, hereby dedicate and proclaim Monday, May 27th, 2013 as Memorial Day in the City of Milton, and call this observance to the attention of all our citizens. Given under his hand and seal of the City of Milton, Georgia on this 20th day of May 2013.
And I would like to just add a special thanks to Councilmember Lusk because on his own will, he started a great tradition by putting up the crosses you see in honor of those who have served and lost their life for us. So it's grown to quite a lot of work, and I know he has some help, but what an undertaking, and it's a great tradition, and I think it speaks very well of Milton and our values and our appreciation.
Thank you.
Okay, I think on our agenda we moved the new business item up before our zoning agenda. So if our city clerk will please call that item.
Consideration of a resolution appointing a member to the City of Milton Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals by appointing a board member for District 3. This is agenda item number 13129. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Okay, I'm going to pass this one on actually for Councilmember Lusk for the appointee for the member of the City of Milton Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals, and have him introduce Mr. Mike Doyle.
I'd like to nominate at this time Mike Doyle to the Board of Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals. Mike has a long history of being in the construction industry, and he works for one of the most well-known general contractors in the city of Alpharetta. Mike lives up in Richmond Glen, and Mike was on the original board when it was formed, 6 years ago, which had never met. But this time I'd like to appoint him by motion.
Okay.
Second.
Good.
Is that your motion?
Got a motion, Councilmember Lusk, and then a second by Councilman. And I'd just like to, do we have a city attorney somewhere? Yeah. Just for the record, Mr. Doyle works with me on a professional level, so I don't think there's any conflict of interest there, but I just want to make sure that that was said to the record. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. So at this point, if Mike, if you wouldn't mind stepping forward, and I will swear you in. Just if you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear and affirm
I do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
that I will faithfully perform the duties of
the Construction Board of Appeals member
the Construction Board of Appeals member
of the city,
of the city,
and that I will support and defend the charter thereof,
that I will support and defend the charter thereof,
as well as the Constitution
as well as the Constitution
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and the laws of the state of Georgia
and of the United States of America.
and of the United States of America.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
You know what you're in for now?
Yeah.
And one more there. And the mayor's, I'm going to give you one to keep. This is the liaison for the board. His name's Wade Green. He's
Okay.
and he'll reach out to you for the first meeting. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Signers.
And that was
This is
yours to
mine.
keep.
Okay.
Thank you.
You don't have to take a photo of me.
I think it already got taken when you didn't even know it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to our zoning agenda. We don't have anything in a first presentation or public hearing, so we're going to move to our zoning agenda. If our city clerk would please call that item.
At the second regularly scheduled meeting of the month, the mayor and city council will consider a zoning agenda. These items include rezoning, petitions, modifications of zoning, use permits, and associated concurrent variances, in addition to ordinances, resolutions, and text amendments. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. The city clerk will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards were received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. The Planning Commission has heard the rezoning agenda items, and recommendations have been forwarded to the mayor and city council for consideration and disposition. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the council during this meeting unless requested to do so. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the council in consideration of your application should be submitted to the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the council. When an opponent of a rezoning action has made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Our first zoning item this evening, consideration of U1301, VC 1302, Birmingham Highway, State Route 372, East Side. Lucagia Turco for a use permit for 1 baseball field and an 8,800 square foot barn. A concurrent variance is also requested to delete the 75-foot buffer and 10-foot improvement setback adjacent to AG1 residentially used property and provide a 50-foot setback along the north, east, and south property lines. Section 64.114.3b. This is agenda item number 13089. First presentation was heard at the April 8th, 2013 regular council meeting. Ms. Robin McDonald.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This item was before you last month and was deferred to have further work with the applicant to resolve some issues. Just to refresh you a little bit, it contains 4.814 acres, currently zoned AG1, and is part of a larger tract of AG1 zone land. A grading permit was issued on May 29, 2012 for the subject site, and a revised grading permit on August 27, 2012 for the construction of a baseball field. The applicant seeks a use permit for a recreational field. This is existing zoning. As you can see, the beige is AG1. To the northwest is C1, which is the garden center. Again, this is a future land use. Most of the areas recommended for agricultural, estate, residential, and equestrian. This is a site plan that's been submitted on February 5th, 2013. Again, as stated above, a grading permit was issued on May 29th for this site, as well as an adjoining parcel to the south. The plan proposed additional pasture paddock areas for agricultural uses, as well as a building pad for future greenhouses. All of these uses are permitted under AG1 zone property. After the issuance of the grading permit, a revision to the grading permit was made on August 27th to substitute a baseball field for the paddock on the eastern portion of the site. At that time, the Community Development Plan Review staff was informed that the baseball field would be for personal use of the property owner. This limited use of the baseball field would not require any additional zoning actions. After the revision to the grading permit was approved, the Community Development Department was informed that the proposed baseball field would be utilized by players other than the owner of his family. Staff informed the applicant that a use permit for rec fields would be required to allow the use of the field by others other than his personal use. The Planning Commission at their March 26, 2013 meeting recommended approval conditional of U1301 and the concurrent variance for the deletion of the 75-foot buffer with the following conditions that they recommended. Provide evidence that all adjacent landowners have no opposition to the deletion of the buffer in place with a 50-foot setback, and that the agreed upon landscape plan with Mr. Bateman actually be spread on the record shown as Exhibit A. At the time, B, at the time of the building is constructed, restroom facilities be constructed at that time, and C, hours of operation are limited to daylight hours. So again, these were conditions that were recommended by the Planning Commission. And this is the exhibit of Mr. Bateman's landscape plan, and our city arborist has seen it and has stated that that is fine with him. On April 22nd of this year, you all voted to defer the item to the May 20th meeting, which is tonight. The City Council discussed the following issues that needed further investigation by staff prior to final recommendation. 1, will the subject site meet the required number of tree density units on the site? The city arborist stated that the requirement will be based on an agricultural use that requires 15 tree density units per acre. Staff has worked with the applicant, and the use permit does meet the required tree density total of 72.21 tree density units within the legal description area for the use permit. And I believe you have a copy of Mr. Reese's report that the arborist had reviewed, and he is totally fine with and agrees with. So that's in front of you if you want to look at the specifics of it. Number 2 question was, how will the Americans with Disabilities, ADA requirements for the baseball field be met? The building official has stated that the following items will be required to be in compliance with ADA requirements. A, handicap parking space to be located closer than regular parking spaces. Staff recommends that the placement of the handicap space be provided adjacent to the proposed building based on the need to provide a 2% slope to access the viewing area on the baseball field. Access should be derived via the C1 parcel to this proposed handicap parking space location. Provide a handicapped accessible viewing area on each team side via a 2% ramp, as was indicated earlier. Provide a portable handicap restroom until proposed building is constructed. And lastly, all pathways ramp to be ADA compliant with the materials used. Number 3, in addition, it was determined that the south property line needed to be legally advertised. Staff has advertised this additional property line as required by the zoning ordinance. Staff also notes that the applicant has provided a letter from the property owner to the east, Lawrence Partnership, stating they were not opposed to the plan. They handed it to you all at the last meeting, if you remember that. So here are some pictures of the property as it exists today. This is looking north, and to the right is the slope of the baseball field. So, and then this is looking approximately south with the baseball field on your left. And this is the area where the building would be approximately, I believe, the proposed building. This is the top. This is looking at home plate at the outfield of the baseball field. And you can see the drainage as it comes toward you coming down. And so the requirement of the building official is that the parking space would be kind of toward you to the south, and that they have to keep a 2% slope to access a proposed viewing area next to the home plate area. In conclusion, the proposed baseball field, if developed with staff recommendations, meets the requirements and development standards of the requested use permit. The applicant has not demonstrated the need for the requested concurrent variance to reduce the 75-foot buffer and 10-foot improvement setback to a 50-foot setback along the northeast and south property lines. Therefore, staff recommends denial of VC 1302 and approval conditional of U 1301. Staff offers the following recommended conditions for use permit for a baseball field and building. 1A, one baseball field and a building at a density of 1,828 gross floor area per acre zoned, or a total of 8,800 square feet, whichever is less. Also, it's conditioned to the site plan received by the City of Milton on February 5th, 2013. And condition 3, to the owner's agreement to the following site development considerations. Provide a 75-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback adjacent to northeast and south property lines. B, require 72.21 tree density units to remain on site, planted on site, a combination of both, or in lieu of planting, the dollar amount shall be determined by the city arborist, may be placed in the Tree City Fund. Just to clarify, the 72.21 tree density units are on the property of the 4+ acres. It's not on any other portion of his property. So just want to clarify that. Provide a recorded cross easement between the subject property and the property to the north for pedestrian access. No outside loudspeakers permitted on the site. No outdoor lighting, including lighting for the field, permitted on the site. F, no concessions permitted within the proposed 8,800 square foot building or new or temporary structures or vehicles used for concessions. G, comply with all ADA, site and building requirements and other building code requirements for the baseball field and the building. H, provide plantings as shown on Mr. Bateman's planting plan, Exhibit A, at the southeast corner of the site. And I've included these other conditions that were recommended by the Planning Commission if you so choose to include any of these. And I had outlined those earlier. And again, this is Mr. Bateman's plan. And so that concludes the staff's recommended conditions and report. Thank you.
Okay, so, before we get started, is there any public hearing? Is there any questions for Ms. McDonald on this so far? Okay, we'll open up and let those that are speaking in support of this application.
Our first speaker comes from Scott Reese.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Scott Reese with Brumlow Reese & Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia. I'm here tonight representing Luca Gianturco, his application for a special use permit to operate a private baseball field. I feel like I have visited this proposal before. In the interest of all of our sanity and to alleviate any boredom, I have met with staff and we've attempted to address all of the concerns. And I apologize, timing was kind of an issue, but we have a recommended conditions from the applicant. I apologize, there's one that I have just discovered that I think needs to be changed from my type. In Robin and our discussion, we somehow missed that the recorded cross easement would now need to be pedestrian and vehicular access for the handicapped, and I missed that also. So I apologize, but I think we have the ability to remedy that, hopefully. Robin, would that be acceptable? I would think that would be the quickest. Basically, there are only going to be a couple of changes, but number one is the same as the staff to the owner's agreement to restrict the use of the subject property as follows: one baseball field and building at a density of 1,828 gross floor area per acre zoned, or a total of 8,800 square feet, whichever is less. Number two, to the owner's agreement to abide by the following, to the site plan received by the City of Milton Community Development Department on February 5th, 2013. Said site plan is conceptual only and must meet or exceed the requirements of the zoning ordinance and these conditions prior to the approval of a land disturbance permit. Unless otherwise noted herein, compliance with all conditions shall be in place prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. To the owner's agreement to the following site development considerations. Provide a 50-foot building setback line on all property lines. B, require 72.21 tree density units to remain on site, planted on site, a combination of both, or in lieu of planting. The dollar amount to be determined by the city arborist may be placed in the city tree fund. C, provide a recorded cross easement between the subject property and the property to the north for pedestrian and vehicular access. No outside loudspeakers permitted on site. All outdoor lighting must meet the City of Milton night sky ordinance. And Robin and I have discussed we may need to add no field lighting is in this proposal. Number F, or letter F, only beverage vending machines are permitted within the proposed 8,800 square foot building or new or temporary structures or vehicles used for concessions. G, comply with all required ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, site and building requirements and other building code requirements for the baseball field and 8,800 square foot building. Provide plantings as shown on Mr. Bateman's planning plan at the southeast corner of the site. We have gone through and after Robin and I discussed the problems with topography and meeting the 2% grade, we determined the only place that we could meet the requirements for the handicap parking were at the proposed barn, and we're showing the proposed access from the garden center to the proposed barn, and also the area behind home plate, which would allow for the handicap seating. We have attempted to address all of staff and council and planning commission's comments. If at this time I would conclude my presentation, and I would be happy to try to answer any questions. Thank you.
Let me, are there any other speakers
No, sir, there are
for
not.
or against this?
There are not, sir.
Okay. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and then if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Reese, answer a question.
Okay. I just wanted to
Yes, sir.
just question one thing. This 2% grade we're talking about, is that for the entire access of the
That would,
handicap accessible?
it's for the pedestrian.
Pedestrian, right?
Right. I mean, it's, you know, you can drive
Right.
a car to the parking space, and once from the parking space to the viewing area, it has to meet the 2% grade,
Okay.
ADA
My
requirement.
understanding is ADA requirement allows up to 5% for an accessible grade, continuous 5% slope.
This
I
was,
just wanted to-
this was from the building department. You know, that is our typical, the 5%, but
Right.
I went on his recommendation, and the only, I couldn't get 5%. There's a 32-foot elevation change from the
understand.
base to the field.
It's just that ADA does require, or
I-
does allow up to a
That's-
5% slope.
I thought you guys had a special City of Milton requirement, and I was kind of exhausted from the arguing, so.
Okay.
I would substitute that it meets national ADA requirements, if I so might, as opposed to 2%. Gives us a little more leeway.
Scott,
Yes, sir.
you've marked out in orange here the handicap access path.
Yes.
You mentioned in your conditions that it must be vehicular and pedestrian accessible. Is
That,
what you're
that
showing
orange
here?
strip would be, we will create a legal description that will describe that orange strip. But there's going to, he's not completely through with the road building. And after it is completed, we will do an as-built survey and locate that driveway and create a meets and bounds legal description that will provide the cross easement.
Will it be paved?
No, it will be crusher run, or so it will be an all-weather, that meets it's what
Be
we
accessible.
standardly use on fire truck access and turnaround, but it will not be asphalt or concrete. Now, we do understand that the parking space itself, even though the space may be crusher run or some other material, there must be a permanent paved strip next to, we did the same thing with the garden center, and that would be proposed on this, but I did not go to that detail on the site.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Karen?
Okay, it looks like to me the differences between what staff has recommended and your applicant recommended are 3A, E, and F.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
We are substituting the 75-foot strip with a 50-foot building setback, and C, the recorded cross easement to include vehicular access, and the beverage vending machines in F, and
the
E.
outdoor lighting?
Outdoor lighting must. The thing with the outdoor lighting is, in discussions with staff and with the applicant, if the proposed barn is constructed and it is in use in the wintertime, and at 5:30 in the afternoon or 6 o'clock when they step out, it is dark. We would like some outdoor lighting that's downward facing to meet the night sky ordinance, just for safety reasons, and possibly some security lighting also.
But your intent is not to have the fields be lit, the lighting that
Yes.
would be there would be strictly
Right.
for,
For that purpose, and we had stated in the original letter of intent that the field was not to be lit.
okay, and then on F, he says only beverage vending machines are permitted within the proposed 8,800 square foot building or newer temporary structures or vehicles used for concessions. I'm not real sure I understand what that means.
Well, that is verbatim from staff up until I added the beverage vending machines. So I can't really state to where I was just trying. I think they were trying to encompass any chance of any form or manner of a concession stand, being a temporary concession truck, any new buildings, a temporary tent. So
You would say vehicles used for concessions are not allowed? Because the way I read this, it says that they are allowed.
What I'm saying, if they were, that it would only be for, water, Gatorade, sodas. But you can so strike it. This is my feeble attempt to take a staff condition and word it for my applicant's desire.
I mean, I want to make sure we're not going to end up with what they have on Thursday nights in Alpharetta, where they have the food
Yeah.
trucks.
I don't think that
15 food trucks there to.
No, if it would clean it up to just mark that out and just say that any, what he is seeking, and my poor choice of semantics, I guess, is he just wants the ability to have beverage vending machine on site to provide Gatorade or water or soda for any player.
Okay, and then the planning commission also had a condition that they had recommended that at the time the building was constructed, restroom facilities be constructed at that time.
Yes.
Are
and-
you willing to have that condition?
Yes, ma'am.
So we could add that to the recommended
Yes.
conditions also.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I would like to get staff's opinion on 3A, because I think that's the biggest one, because they had recommended denial of the variance, and I think this is actually allowing the variance. So I would like to get staff's recommendation on the 3A.
Staff's recommendation is that if you approve this with conditions, that 3A read provide a 50-foot setback adjacent to the northeast and south property lines.
So staff does not agree with the applicant's recommended condition 3A.
Does not.
And what's the, other than the obvious, the 50-foot setback versus the 75, what's the difference there?
As we had stated before, the applicant's vision is for as close to a rural farm atmosphere as can be created with the baseball field. There are steep slopes that were constructed with the baseball field, and he's proposing to fence those slopes and have them grazed with livestock, sheep and goats. And the whole scenario is for it to have a farm-like appearance, and we were going for that with grassed areas around. And the earlier sessions were if we had neighbor approval of this, of our conditions that, well, I guess Planning Commission on there earlier, and I guess somewhat of an understanding at the last was if we had met those, that we were not creating a problem per se. We're not, if the neighbors, the people that are most directly affected, are not in opposition to this, then it's almost, I feel like it's a solution looking for a problem. That he is, we've tried to meet with all the neighbors. Mr. Bateman was the only one that had some concerns about the clearing or in his area, and we have addressed that. The other neighbors, we've addressed their concerns. So the intent is to have it as grassed and as close to approximation of a farm as we can have. So that's the applicant's intent, and that is the reason for the variance request for a 50-foot setback, which is the standard in AG property as opposed to a 75-foot planted buffer.
I can understand the 75 going to a setback rather than an undisturbed buffer if you want to put grass there, but I guess I'm still having trouble understanding why it needs to go from 50 to 75, from 75 feet to 50 feet.
We were just going with the standard AG zoning, which is 50 feet around there.
If you did the 75-foot setback, would that affect the applicant with the planting buffer, that still would give the same effect that, or does that encroach on your?
A 75-foot structure setback would, I don't want to get away from the microphone. If the problem is that it needs to be a 75-foot structure setback instead of a 50, I see no real, with the site plan, any problem. We were just proceeding with the same setbacks that are on AG zoned like zoning property.
Okay, do I have any other questions? For Mr. Reese?
I guess my only question is, from the 50-foot to the 75-foot, does that affect, I just want to make sure I understand how it affects the baseball field operationally. If it's 75, would that disaffect the baseball field from that standpoint?
We're just talking structure. I don't know that would affect the baseball field.
My past experiences, the definition of a structure is a structure, not a fence, not grading or use, but actually not a sidewalk or anything along that line. There's nothing that we're proposing in that additional 25 feet as far as any structure. So if it's the heartburn of going from 50 to 75 and we can proceed and go ahead, then I don't necessarily have any problem with, and I don't think my applicant does either.
Okay. And just to clarify too, is with staff as well, have there been any negative feedback or comments from neighbors or citizens other than the one buffer, the one property owner? Okay.
We have we've addressed all the neighbors, made contact, and shown them the plan and the proposed plantings, and discussed the intent for the animals and all with the fencing, and everyone was fine with it, the neighbors.
Okay. Bill?
Still a little fuzzy on the setback issue. On your site plan here, you're showing the north property line, east property line with a 50-foot structure setback.
Yes, sir.
Are we looking at a variance for that one? And the setback appears to be at the, is it Toa slope or that's at the Toa slope, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, which property line?
North and east.
Yes, that 50-foot structure setback is at the toe of the slope on
Right.
the north property line, and it's at the top of the slope on the east property line.
Okay. All right.
Now, you know what? I'm going to have to back out because we're proposing the barn 56.34 feet from the south property line, which even though it's property that Mr. Gianturco owns, it would be. So there, we need to stay with our proposed 50-foot building setback as far as the variance request.
And that's just for the barn.
Just for the barn, I mean, if it needed to be worded that it was the north property line and the east property line, which affect properties not owned by Mr. Gianturco, but the south property line, if a 75-foot building setback was proposed upon that line, it would.
Well, I'm just trying to understand here. On
Yes,
the
sir.
north and on the east, you're showing a 50-foot structure setback. On the north, it's to the toe of the slope, and on the east, it's top of the slope. But
Yes.
then you've got another, 25 feet to, either the top of the slope or the bottom of the slope on those two sides.
The
So
south.
is there an issue with the north property line and the east property line setbacks? Is that part of the variance
It's
request?
part of the variance. The variance or the conditions for a special use permit in the Northwest overlay are you must provide a 75-foot planted buffer. And we're asking for relief from that and substituting, instead of a 75-foot planted buffer, we're asking for a substitution of a 50-foot structure setback as opposed to a 75-foot planted buffer. But we did not show on our site plan the 75-foot planted buffer. Am I confusing you more? I'm not intending to, and by any.
We're talking about two different.
We may be talking about two
Okay.
different things here.
I think, just to clarify, and obviously I think everybody knows we're talking the difference between a planted buffer and a building setback. The north and east property lines are separate owners.
Yes.
Butting up. So, the question might be, do those two property lines need to, does the council feel that those need to be 75-foot building setback? The one that you're referring to with the barn is a property line owned by the same property owner.
That is correct.
That, maybe the council will look at allowing a 50-foot on that. Is that correct? But you still,
Yes.
you're going to need the variance from a planted
right.
buffer.
Yes,
You're going to need that, you're asking for that variance.
I'm asking for the variance from the 75-foot planted buffer to a 50-foot building setback. That's
Or a
or
75.
or a 75
would
on
work on
the
the
north
two.
and east.
The two
Well,
sets.
I see where you already have it. You've got a 50-foot setback on the north side.
Yes.
To the toe of the slope, 50 feet on the east side to the top of the slope, then
Yes.
you've got the slope.
Yes.
So there's a distance on that slope too.
I think the
The
difference
distance
is,
doesn't matter, it's the planted and not
it's
planted.
whether it's
On
planted
that,
buffer.
on those two lines.
Yes.
Plant some buffer on the hill.
Yes, it's,
I think part of the confusing part of it is a 50-foot structure setback. There's no structure in there.
no, but yes,
Would be for
but we
future.
understand that we could not do anything in that 50 feet as far as any proposed, feeding structures for animals or any
Correct.
type of maintenance shed, anything. We're saying that would, but instead of a planted buffer, it would be grassed with animals.
It's planted as far as.
Yeah, it's not in, well, it doesn't meet buffer standards, which are the evergreens on 6-foot spacing is what we're trying to avoid.
Gotcha. So the real critical one is the barn setback.
Yes, sir.
And y'all would be happy with 75 on the north and east and leave 50
Well,
on the south?
life as far as acceptable and
Yeah.
happy may be to
Are you married?
emotions, but
Agreeable.
agreeable. I kind of like my first, but
I'm sure you do.
I understand.
Mayor, I'm ready to make a
All
motion
right.
if we don't have any further questions.
All right. I'll accept the motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion in consideration of U 13-01, VC 13-02, Birmingham Highway, State Route 372, East Side, Luca, Geoturca, for a use permit for one baseball field and an 8,800 square foot barn. The concurrent variance is also requested to delete the 75-foot buffer and 10-foot improvement setback adjacent to AG1 residentially used property and provide a 50-foot setback along the north, east, and south property lines, conditioned upon the following: the owner's agreement to restrict the use of this subject property as follows: 1, baseball field and building at a density of 1,828 gross floor area per acre zoned, or a total of 8,800 square feet, whichever is less. 2, to the owner's agreement to abide to the following: to the site plan received by the City of Milton Community Development Department on February 5th, 2013. Said site plan is conceptual only and must meet or exceed the requirements of the zoning ordinance and these conditions prior to the approval of a land disturbance permit. Unless otherwise noted herein, compliance with all conditions shall be in place prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. To the owner's agreement to the following site development considerations: A, to provide a 75-foot building setback line on the north and east and a 50-foot setback line on the south and west. B, to require 72.21 tree density units to remain on site, planted on site, a combination of both, or in lieu of planting, the dollar amount to be determined by the city arborist may be placed in the city tree fund. C, provide a recorded cross easement between the subject property and the property to the north for pedestrian access, including the drive, pedestrian and vehicle access. D, no outside loudspeakers permitted on site. E, all outdoor lighting must meet the City of Milton night sky ordinance and no lighting for the fields. F, only beverage vending machines are permitted within the 8,800 square foot building. No concessions permitted in temporary structures or vehicles used for concessions. G, comply with all required ADA, site and building requirements and other building code requirements for the baseball field and 8,800 square foot building. H, provide plantings as shown on Mr. Bateman's planning plan at the southeast corner of the site. And I, restroom facilities will be constructed at the time the building is constructed.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got a motion as read by Councilmember Thurman and seconded by Councilmember Hewitt. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask a question. If I can, I think I captured what happened there. Councilmember, I'd ask you maybe if you might consider a couple of just quick little additions to that. In D, where you said no outside loudspeakers permitted on site, would you be interested in including no outside loudspeakers or any amplified sound permitted on site? I think amplified sound is an important word to get in there. As well as potentially considering in F that the beverage vending machines make some reference to the fact that they're not visible, meaning they're not outside the building, but they're actually contained within the 8,800 square foot building.
Okay, it says beverage machines are permitted within the proposed 8,800 square foot. Does that need to be?
Well, I've seen within being interpreted as under a awning or
okay.
something. You know, we're moving towards vending machines just not being visible from exterior spaces. So I think if there's an opportunity here to tighten it up, I'd appreciate it if we could.
Okay, I will accept both of those as to say that the no outside loudspeakers are amplified on permitted on site, and that the only beverage vending machines are permitted located within the proposed 8,800 square foot structure, not visible from the exterior, in addition to the no concession stands and temporary structures or vehicles used for concessions.
And I'll agree to the second.
I believe it's clear. I've captured that motion.
And just to clarify too, with the, I know we talked, last meeting about concessions of, possibly having something where they could have Gatorades and snacks and things like that, or, and I think we discussed if they put a gas grill out by the field one day and did hamburgers or hot dogs. Does this affect that in any way, Ryman? Okay.
I mean, they can bring their igloo full of, chest of drinks and then take it with them.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? I think I'd like to ask if Mr. Reese would mind after this just filling out a short survey on your experience dealing with the city of Milton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you. You would be surprised how it would reflect with some of my other municipalities. But really, you guys are a pleasure to work with most of the time, for sure. Thank you.
I'll be glad to meet with you later, and at some point we can certainly see if there's room for improvement. Okay. Will the city clerk please call the next zoning item?
Our next item is consideration of RZ 1310, Batesville Road, north side, approximately 1,250 feet west of Birmingham Highway, Section 202, land lots 777, 736, 737, Cornerstone Bank, to rezone from AG1 agricultural to CUP community unit plan to develop a 15 single-family residences, minimum 1 acre lots on 19.9 acres. Agenda item number 13118. First presentation was heard at the May 6th, 2013 regular council meeting. Ms. Robin McDonald.
Again, council and mayor, this is a request for rezoning on Batesville Road, approximately on the north side, northeast side. There's a location map. It contains 19.9 acres. It's currently zoned AG1 and developed with 15 lots, with 1 existing house and 1 under construction. The purpose is to rezone to CUP, Community Unit Plan, to allow more flexible setbacks for topography issues and correct setbacks for the existing house. So this subdivision was approved and constructed under Fulton County. It was formerly known as the Milton Register subdivision. The proposed name is Highgrove, just FYI. Brightwater Homes has purchased all the lots except for the existing home since the time of the application. So, permitted and developed prior to the incorporation of the city, as I just said. The Planning Commission voted to approve the requested CUP at its April 23rd meeting and a vote of 5-0. Again, this is the existing zoning. To the southwest, I guess, is Atlanta National. That's a CUP right there. The future land use calls for low-density residential. This is their site plan. It was revised. Purpose of the revision was just to tweak some little mistakes and just clean it up. Nothing major. These are some pictures of the site currently. That's the entrance off of Batesville. And then also here is a house under construction that's being permitted under us. That at the top is the existing house that was currently has been built over the setback lines for AG1. So that's another reason for asking for the CUP to fix those problems. The lower photograph is a picture of the existing detention pond near Batesville. There's actually 2 detention ponds. There's one way in the rear down the hill that nobody can see. And again, this was built under Fulton County standards. That's why there's a chain link fence, and we're going to be talking about how we're going to address that. Based on the applicant's revised site plan submitted to the Community Development Department on April 22nd, staff offers the following considerations. With the CUP, it allows the applicant to specify building setbacks. In this case, they're asking for a 20-foot setback for the front, and for sides, 10 feet, except for Lot 4, which shall have a 25-foot side setback along the exterior property line. The purpose of this is there's a house next to it that's fairly far back on their lot, so they want to provide an extra little bit of setback for the new house from that adjacent neighbor. Side yard setbacks adjacent to a street is 20 feet, and the rear yard is 50 feet. I call it the Burger King way. You can have it whatever way you want it, pretty much. Landscape strips and buffers. Staff notes that a 20-foot landscape strip and fencing are required around all detention ponds pursuant to Section 5185C. The site plan does not indicate the required landscape strip and fencing for the facility adjacent to Batesville. There is a black-clad chain link fence that was erected on the site under Fulton County rules. The city arborist has met on site with the applicant, and the applicant has agreed to take down the chain link fence, yay, along the Batesville Road side and Gables Run side, and replaced with a 6-foot-high equestrian-style fence. It will be placed approximately 10 feet from the current location, away from the pond, to provide an equestrian look at the entrance. So it's basically providing an entrance feature as well as providing for the stormwater facility fencing. The north and east sides of the stormwater facility will keep the existing fence, as there are pines and heavy growth and mix of hardwoods to provide screening of the fence. Other site plan considerations. Although the site plan does not indicate the required sidewalks, the applicant has stated that they will be constructed as required by the code on both sides of the street. Environmental site analysis. It satisfies the requirement of the zoning ordinance. A field survey of the site was conducted to verify areas addressed in the ESA. To note, the site also contains slopes exceeding 25% and up to 39% in areas. These aggressive slopes are the reason for the requested rezoning to reduce environmental impact due to the steep slopes in the rear of the site. In regards to different information that we received from Fulton County, here's the matrix that they sent us. It says, I can't read this far, that for Birmingham Elementary, it can meet the capacity, but for Northwestern and Milton, it does not meet. It overflows. This is financial modeling for your information that we do for all of our rezoning requests. In regards to public involvement, on March 27th of this year, the applicant was present at the CZIM meeting. There was no one from the community in attendance. City of Milton Design Review Board, April 2nd of this year. The board suggested to incorporate the topography into your house placement. They were in agreement with that. Also provide a streetscape that promotes walking within the subdivision, which they were totally open to that as well. Standards of review. I'll just kind of go through this because basically the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and what's surrounding it. So that deals with that one. Will the proposal adversely affect existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby property? It's the staff's opinion that it will not adversely affect the use or usability of the nearby and adjacent properties. The subject site may have a reasonable use currently zoned AG1. Staff does not anticipate a significant impact on public services or utilities. The estimated number of new students for the proposed rezoning, which will have an impact on Birmingham Falls Elementary, Northwestern Middle School, and Milton High School, is minimal. The subdivision is already developed and will not have a negative impact on existing streets, transportation facilities, or utilities. Sorry. Okay.
Could be.
Well, we know. The proposed density, whether the proposal is in conformity with the policies and intent of the land use plan. The plan calls for low-density residential, and the proposal is consistent at 0.753 units per acre. The majority of the lots in the rear of the development have substantial slopes. The request for the proposal of CUP allows for additional flexibility to better site the remaining homes within a subdivision. These facts are grounds to recommend approval of the proposed CUP if developed with the recommended conditions. The proposed use will not be environmentally adverse to the natural resources, environment, and citizens of the city if developed with the recommended conditions. And in conclusion, if developed with this, as a CUP with the recommended conditions, the 15-lot single-family subdivision would be consistent with the 2030 City of Milton Comprehensive Plan and will provide for a better development with the proposed CUP development standards. Therefore, staff recommends approval conditional of RZ 1310 to CUP. Staff offers the following recommended conditions for the requested rezoning to CUP for 15 lots. To the owner's agreement to restrict the use of the subject property as follows: single-family detached dwellings and accessory uses and structures. B, no more than 15 total dwelling units at a maximum density of 0.753 units per acre, whichever is less based on the total acreage, and so forth. 2, to the owner's agreement to abide by the following: to the revised site plan received by the Community Development Department on April 22nd, 2013. I won't bore you with the rest of it. And B, all areas which are not part of an individual lot and held in common shall be maintained by a mandatory homeowners association whose proposed documents of incorporation shall be submitted to the Director of Community Development for review and approval prior to the recording of the first final plat. To the owner's agreement to the following site development considerations. I will walk you through this because these are very specific to this site. Minimum lot size is 1 acre. Maximum height is 35 feet. Minimum lot width at building line is 100 feet. Minimum lot frontage is 35 feet. Minimum heated floor area per unit, not units, per unit, is 3,500 square feet. Minimum front yard is 20 feet. Minimum side yard is 10, except for lot 4, which we talked about, and shall be 25 feet. Minimum side yard adjacent to a street is 20. Minimum rear yard is 50. Construct sidewalks on both sides of streets for the entire development per City Code Chapter 50. Condition 4, speaking to the stormwater management facility, shall utilize earthen embankments, etc., and they're actually already there, so they've already met that. Where side slopes for stormwater management facility are steeper than 4.1, the facility shall have a 6-foot-high, 5-board equestrian-style fence with 2-inch by 4-inch welded wire constructed around it, or equivalent as may be approved by the City of Milton Public Works Department. And lastly, I believe, provide a 20-foot landscape strip on the exterior side of the required fencing for the stormwater management facility adjacent to Batesville Road with selection of plantings approved by the city arborist. And that concludes our staff report.
Okay, before I open up this hearing, anyone have questions for Robert or staff on this? And just to clarify, this going to a CUP zoning on this really just allows some internal flexibility for the property owner to develop the
Correct,
lots
yes,
with
right.
slopes and things like that. But overall, as far as zoning and density and all that, it's no
Totally in
more dense
conformance,
than,
yeah.
AG1 or the minimum in the city of Milton. So
Right,
it's not, they're not getting any more lots or density with that.
right.
Karen?
The only thing I did not see in this, which we sometimes see, is a minimum distance between houses, because that can make a big difference on how something looks. Because I guess here you would actually have houses that were just 20 feet apart.
That's correct. That's
Is that
based on the
considered-
topography.
Because I know, a lot of times we do, even with a minimum side yard setback, we do still also have minimum distances between the homes, just to make sure that you don't end up with something that gives a very different look than what was intended. And is that something staff would consider?
So you're saying if they were asking for 10 foot, you'd say a max, of 20 feet separation?
Well, there'd be no need to say 20 feet, but it would have to usually be something like a minimum of 25 feet between residences to make sure that you didn't end up with a more of a cluster type look in the homes.
I mean, you would have to ask the applicant about that.
Isn't that what the setback is for?
Right,
does
it's
that
for 10
dictate
feet
that?
to the side,
Yeah, but a lot of
correct.
times, even with the setback, you still have minimum distances between. Because if you have to use, because of the topography, one of them 10 feet off, then, you don't want it to look like your houses are very close together in one area and then far apart in another.
Well, by default, the setback's going to control that, obviously. You could, as Councilman
Not
McDermott said,
necessarily. Yeah.
you can add a minimum distance, but not sure if that's an issue. And again, is the applicant here to speak? When the applicant speaks, that's something they can maybe address. Any other questions for staff? If not, I'll go ahead and open with those speaking in support of this application.
Mr. John Lloyd.
Good evening. My name is John Lloyd with Ridge Planning and Engineering, 1785 White Circle, Marietta, Georgia, 30066. I'm here speaking on behalf of the applicant, Brightwater Homes. We have met with staff on a handful of occasions. Obviously, our concern is, and the reason for application for rezoning to CUP was for relief on the aggressive existing topography, limit clearing and grading in order to decrease environmental impact. We accept staff recommendations with the with the clarification on condition I, which is that the 5-board equestrian style fence be limited to the entry pond. The secondary pond that's in the back of the property is about 80 feet below the curb, and it's currently grown up, and it was under the Fulton County standard, so that is also a chain link fence. We just feel that any efforts that we put down there would probably better use landscaping the entrance. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Charlie Boswick with Brightwater Homes.
Thank you. Charlie Bostwick, Brightwater Homes, operating at 230 Hammond Drive in Sandy Springs. Thank you for hearing our request this evening. We are a design-build firm of custom architecture. We spend a lot of time trying to make sure we have place-appropriate architecture, and I think in this case that means equestrian-style farmhouses, what I call the crabapple style, and I think what we're talking about here will allow us to reach that even more, so that we've got the space to do a wider home where a farmhouse, the house can be a farmhouse and the garage can be a carriage house, and it can feel upscale while still feeling farmhouse. When we think about how to lay out a neighborhood, we think often about how to make it livable and walkable, and so we were planning to the sidewalks both sides already anyway. Run sidewalks from large front porches out to the street trees along the street, that sort of thing. I think streets can be exciting, by the way. Right, Robin?
Yes.
So, and the big thing here is that the changes that we're talking about making will create will be better practices for environmental purposes. We're a green builder as well, and taking down fewer trees, disturbing less slope, and all that sort of thing. I hope we're leaning towards that. And as Mr. Lloyd said, we met on site with the arborist Mark Law and talked about where to put the new horse fence and where to take down the chain link fence. And we're pleased with what he suggests. I think it's better for everyone actually to bring it out from the pond a little bit and actually give access for maintenance to the pond. It'll help a lot as well. So along Batesville, along Gables Run, as you enter the two places he's asked us to put it, we're happy to do that.
Okay. Is there, while we're still in the public hearing, is there anyone speaking in favor?
There is not, sir.
And what about, is there anyone speaking opposed?
This is the final, sir. None in
Okay,
opposed.
that's fine. So I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and then if there's any questions or if the applicant wants to address the concern of Councilwoman Thurman on the, it's basically the setbacks, or 20, I guess it would be 20 feet between a home if that's an issue, or if you've got lots on there where that's an issue.
I can do that now. So most of these homes will be side entry garages, and so for the most part that will give us quite a bit of space between the houses where we have the side entry garages, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. Be nice. There's one particular place where in a cul-de-sac where it may pinch just a little bit, but I think for most of the site we'll end up with well in excess of the 20 feet between homes.
And just for the record, the rumor mill in Milton is that you're building a bank with drive-through on the property. I assume based on the site plan that there is no bank with a drive-through going onto the property?
That is correct. That's news to me. I mean, that's a new one for me. That's correct. There's nothing but residential homes, individual residential homes on this site.
Downside of putting the sign says Banco.
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay, right.
Yeah. Yes, I have had comments from people that are concerned about the bank and the drive-through of the bank on the property. So.
That's funny.
Okay, Bill?
Sorry, I don't remember the first gentleman's name.
Yes,
You mentioned...
John Lloyd.
You mentioned the detention pond in the rear of the property is overgrown. Are you going to abandon that pond and just use the front pond?
No, I may have misspoken. It's grown in. I wouldn't say that it's overgrown per se.
Okay.
There are some existing trees that are in place there. Before Mr. Boswick purchased the property, we obviously did an evaluation of the existing facilities. I mean, everything's in place and functioning. So it's not as if it's abandoned or overgrown. It's more that it is, I would say, it's mature with natural growth now.
So it hasn't been maintained, is that what you said?
I would say it probably hasn't, no, up until now it has not been maintained because it was previously almost, it was definitely not in any kind of maintenance program previously. I would still say that it's also, though, functioning. So the outlet control structure is in place and it's working. There's no issue from that standpoint that I could tell.
But it will be maintained?
Oh, yes, to answer your question, yes, and it will be maintained in the future.
Yeah, I think that's, with inspectors, inspections, and ongoing permits. That
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's several violations around, need to be corrected. So. Sure you're not one of them.
Not at all.
We'll say one
Maybe.
foot at a time from the pound.
No.
Go ahead. Yeah.
We talk about the setback, we're saying in the cul-de-sac, so you might have a place in the cul-de-sac with a pinch point where just two corners, the front corners of the houses might be closer together, but then they got diverging walls.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it wouldn't be that the whole houses are that
Right.
close to each other, just maybe at one point that,
Right, and you have
that
diverging walls.
they're not 40 feet apart at that point.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? If not, certainly open up for a motion.
I'll make a motion for the consideration of RZ 13-10, it's agenda item 13-118, to approve with staff's recommended conditions.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion for approval by Councilmember Hewitt, second by Councilmember Coons. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with your project. New business, we've moved our one item up in the agenda. We have also added a executive session, which, or we can go ahead and, you want to do staff reports first, Chris?
Yeah, let's do some staff
Okay,
reports.
all right. Do staff reports and then.
I saw Rick here to be sworn in. Did he leave? If he left, I guess, they're just here to come back. 30 seconds left too soon. Mayor and Council, we published a couple of staff reports tonight. We've got two that are published, and then there's one that we've got, which I think Sam is still here for. We go ahead and let Sam go first, and then we'll get into the two that were published. This is just something that he's going to explain quickly who we've moved to for a benefit broker for the city after the end of an RFP process where we had more than 13, I think it was 13 firms bid, 11 bid. I'm brokering our benefit services for employees. We have selected and changed and gone a different direction than what we had the first 6 years. There is no contract that's required. There's no action of the council that's required. We just felt it appropriate to go ahead and officially bring forward that we're making the change after the end of a bid process. This was the last of the original services that we had that we needed to go back to the competitive market on to make sure that we were still competitive 6 years into deployment. And with that, we might have stolen his thunder, but I'll let him take it away and kind of explain.
I was just going to say what he
did.
said. And let you know that we decided when we went through our RFQ process, we ended up with the firm Ascension Benefits and Insurance Solutions. So that's where we're moving effective July 1. They'll be available for us to get us through our enrollment or our next process, which October 1, open enrollment. It's sort of an important move with the changing face of healthcare and all of our benefits. I think it'll be good to have a fresh look. So that's what I wanted to notify you of tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to work my way up in the order, if that's okay, because this number 2, I think, is a fairly quick discussion. It's titled here the procedural and general discussion of accepting a plus or minus 1 acre parcel of land located on Birmingham Highway in the Blue Valley subdivision. Let's let Carter talk about that real quick.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Oh, turn Stacy's back on. I turned her off while we were talking.
Okay, there we go. The property in question that we're discussing tonight is a piece on the very north end of town off of 372, right before the Cherokee County line in the Blue Valley subdivision. Back in 2006, when Liberty Grove Road was relocated, originally it ran right along the county line and intersected 372 at a little bit of an odd angle. When they developed the Blue Valley subdivision, they realigned Liberty Grove Road to get a better angle with 372 and then abandoned the old right-of-way. And what that left was a little remainder piece. It's about an acre wide and really not suitable for any type of development with the Blue Valley subdivision. And during that time, there was some discussion about actually dedicating that property to the city or maintaining that property in a conservation easement such that it remained undeveloped, but still under the control of the subdivision. Over the years, the Blue Valley subdivision, when the market went down, kind of died off. It's subsequently been sold to Sharp Realty, and they are currently developing the property. And the question came up as to whether or not the city would like to have this property dedicated fee simple or maintained in a conservation easement. Obviously, fee simple, we'd be required to maintain it, but we would have greater control over the piece of property. If we maintained it in a conservation subdivision type, it would remain undeveloped, but under the control of the well, I don't know what it's going to be now, but it was the Blue Valley subdivision. So the piece of property is about an acre. It's relatively flat. If you're driving south on 372, this is the piece of property on the right. There are a number of two very large trees on the property. This is looking west across the property from 372. Here's one of the two large trees. Roddy's giving you kind of an indication about how big the tree actually is. Another shot looking west from the two large trees. So it's a relatively nice piece of property. It does require some maintenance and mowing, things like that. And currently, we're moving in the direction of accepting this piece of property as a fee simple piece. And I guess if there was any significant objection to that or question, we could bring that back for further discussion at a later council meeting. If there's not any objection, we'll just continue moving forward, accepting this fee simple. And that was it, if there's any questions.
Any questions? Bill?
Is the old roadway still in there?
It's not maintained. It was an old gravel road, so you can see where it was, and you may be able to see it in that photo off to the right. The county maintained the rights to any utilities in that area, although I don't think there are any. But right now, it's just basically overgrown.
Question. As far as the property, is there any type of, should we do some sort of environmental phase one or title or anything like that? Even though they're dedicating it to us, giving it to us.
Prior to acceptance, that's probably a good idea, but there may have been one originally done on the property. We can certainly look that up.
Yeah, well, maybe that would be sufficient then, just to have that and title on the property.
Look, I'm not, we can look at a phase one. I mean, we can always do those. We don't probably, there's not really any anticipation of building anything.
Not that I'm saying that, I had a project one time that they were dedicating a school
Just
site.
CYA.
Yeah. See what's
The developer was dedicating a school site to the city, and actually it was the old cesspools for a hog barn. That's what he was giving the city. So, and that came up in the environmental, not saying.
We'll make sure there's no exotic frogs living.
Right, whatever.
I'll just share, what I had talked with staff about, and obviously there's no free lunch out there. Someone can deed over something to you or give you something, and it doesn't come without cost. So there's pros and cons. If we were to accept this piece of property as fee simple, could be a plus, but then also the con would be, we'd have to pay to maintain it. My thoughts were, though, Chris and I talked, it's not terribly expensive to maintain if we did something simple on it, but it would also, that is one gateway to Milton, and would give us an opportunity if we wanted to put one day a pocket park there, or some kind of symbol that you're entering Milton, or even a bench, and really sign, and just to stop for somebody to if they're out walking, take a break. I think it gives us some potential to make something really nice and stand out for Milton. So I would be in favor of taking on the liability of upkeep, because we can kind of control that by what we do with the property. If we keep it simple, we keep the upkeep simple. If we decide to do something later, we have the property available. So that was just my thoughts.
I'd agree. Being right there at the county line, the city limits sign, it's a gateway to the community. I think given enough input, we could really develop something really attractive there.
Yeah, I concur. Being in that district, I've walked that land. It's beautiful from that standpoint. So so long as it makes sense, then absolutely, let's take a look at it.
Okay. Anybody else?
I agree.
Okay.
Awesome.
Some direction. Okay.
We've got direction there. And the last one, which we were going to talk about last week at a work session, I want to spend a couple minutes talking about tonight, is this discussion on the telecommunications ordinance as it deals with the co-location and how those options play themselves out. With everything that happens and every petition and application that comes through, you learn something from it. I probably had more of a learning experience with the most recent cell tower application that came through than I do in many circumstances, but that's a good thing, because what it caused me to do is look at our ordinance and say, I recognize that we have laws, and sometimes laws are there when common sense doesn't make sense, but why is there something that it seems to be so commonsensical up here in this particular case? Why can't I afford ourselves the opportunity to use it, and why can't the community afford themselves the opportunity to use it? Say all those words, here's what I mean. When that application came in, one of the things that was looked at was the potential to co-locate on a different tower in Milton. One that already exists, one that's already in the air, one that already has, to some extent, troubled the skyline, if we want to say that the vertical real estate has troubled the skyline. But the tower was full, and the tower in its current condition couldn't accept an additional carrier. And if you have a carrier that comes in and proves that they have a substantial coverage gap, or that they can prove that they need to add service in certain data levels in an area, it really restricts you as a council in your ability to say no because of that Wireless Telecommunications Act of 1996. Having said all that, when you go to look at other towers that are already in the area and say, why can't we co-locate? If you find one that exists, but it's just not possible from a structural loading perspective, we certainly would never give approval to have somebody stick more weight in the sky and put a tower at a compromised risk position where it could fall or snap, or that the wind would be so much that it would knock it over. But what I have discovered as I've now gotten a crash course in vertical real estate is that we don't want additional towers in Milton. I think that's number one. And we would like to be able to provide for the needs of the service recipients and the service providers in Milton so that they can get their coverage out. And if there's an opportunity to do that with the existing infrastructure that already exists, we should look at that first, and we should incentivize that potentially before we incentivize telling somebody to go put another 140 feet of steel in the sky. We are working through conceptually right now, and a lot of it is going to depend on whether or not you give me the authority tonight to open up the ordinance and go take a look at it. There's a option that exists, and we'll talk about a real world option at this point. There's a site that exists that would satisfy some of the coverage deficiencies that exist in the area where the tower was applied for as Star Soccer, where one of two things could occur. Either a tower can be extended, and I'll talk about that in just a second, or a tower of better technology and even of better stealth design can be put up in the same area as one that already exists, and they call it a drop-in swap, meaning they basically build one that is a better technology and routinely a better stealth design immediately adjacent to one that already exists, move the carriers over to the new tower, and bring the one down the current. So the net is that you have a tower in the same place that you've always had a tower. The positive potentially is that you can negotiate for better technology, and you can even negotiate for a better stealth design. I don't know if you've seen this one over on Batesville Road that I'm talking about, but it is the funniest looking light pole I think I've ever seen. And it becomes a light pole because it has these two spindle looking lights that I don't believe even work coming off the side of it, and it there is masquerading as a light pole. And I say that almost tongue in cheek, but that's kind of the reality of what we're dealing with. The other option that exists that I might want to look at in our ordinance to incentivize is the opportunity to extend a tower. And just because a tower is built at 140 feet or 150 feet doesn't mean that structurally it can't be added to. Now, I would never advocate the council ever giving up the authority to have a tower go taller than which would be required to be lit by the FAA. Once towers start to blink, flash, and do other things, they become very noticeable when otherwise they aren't. But I think we might have an opportunity to decrease the quantity and amount of steel that goes up in our community if we incentivize companies to look at these options first. Now, I'm not saying that we would abdicate our regulatory authority over any tower that would come to Milton. It's not one of these things that all of a sudden you find a co-location option and by right you're entitled. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about today, the reason that we didn't look at, or the company didn't look at Batesville, is because the application process to drop and swap that tower was exactly the same process that they were going to go through to apply for the Star Soccer tower. They had a willing landowner at Star Soccer. It was just as easy to go through the hassle of doing Stars as it was to pursue a drop and swap. So what I'm asking for, I'm going to turn it over here to the city attorney in just a second, is I'm asking for your consideration. I don't have nuances tonight. If you're going to say, Chris, on a head of a pin, what should we allow versus what we not allow? We're not to that level of detail. But the level of detail that we are at this point is to say, council, would you like us to look at options that we could incentivize co-locations in either drop-in swaps or extensions, so long as the cell tower companies could demonstrate that it would replace an existing request for a new tower? Meaning if we can show that there is some ability to say, we're not even going to come ask for this one, even though we think we're entitled to it, because all we need is 20 feet on this one, or instead of being at 140 feet, we need to go to 160 feet with a new tower, new technology. I want to know if we want to incentivize that, or if we want to stay with the status quo by saying every application that comes in is going to withstand the same scrutiny, whether it's a brand new piece of steel or a 20-foot extension on a currently existing tower. Have I completely confused you all? Does that make sense?
So where are the incentives coming in?
The incentives come in the less intense process. It would still have to come in front of the council. It would still be controlled by the planning commission. You do away with a couple of the front-end things. If there's already a tower there, there's no real benefit in flying a balloon and snapping pictures of it. We already know what it looks like, because it's there. What we're talking about is a quick simulation of adding 20 feet to it or 10 feet to it. We can do that on a computer-generated picture as opposed to flying balloons. So there's incentives. There would be an incentive there. They would still have 4 or 5 bites at the apple by the time it works its way through the public process. But the large public bloodletting that typically goes along with a vertical real estate application, that really would occur in front of you all and let you all make a decision as to whether or not it's the right thing for the community and the planning commission, as opposed to an assortment of in-public meetings trying to defend why we need to ruin this view.
So as far as incentives go, specifically, you mentioned one that's just by increasing the height of an existing tower. Are there any other incentives that you've considered?
We've considered either the opportunity to replace a tower with one that already exists if there's a newer technology that exists, or to extend, but I don't want to even contemplate an extension that would ever get taller than what will be approved by the FAA to be lit. You say, Chris, what is that number? Typically 195 feet is where the FAA requires lighting, but I have to be cautious in saying that because I take each one based upon its own merits and based upon flight patterns. And flight paths, now we're not really adjacent to an airport, so we don't see that, but on an irregular basis, but it's not a strict application of 195 feet in all circumstances because there's other things that come into play.
Elevation.
Yes, ma'am.
Personally, I think one 180-foot tower is a lot less offensive than 2 140-foot towers. So I would be very much in favor of looking at what we need to do to try to achieve that goal.
Okay. I want to be real clear on one thing too, that we as a city, I believe your perspective on this is that the least number of towers, the better. And
Exactly.
I want to just be abundantly clear tonight that I'm not bringing this to you in hopes that we all of a sudden blanket Milton with cell towers. I believe this is working towards your vision of more is less. And that's why we're coming forward with suggesting this is at least worth looking at. And I'm not bringing you a done ordinance tonight, not asking you to do anything other than to say, Chris, that concept sounds good. Go ahead and invest some time into it. With Ken and I'll invest some time into it. And we'll bring you forward something that we at least think is a basis by which we can start to work from.
Now, would this affect any of the ones that we've had in the past for which we are still in litigation?
No, ma'am, it would not. The die is set on those, so this would not affect those in any way.
But I didn't know if there were other towers that were close that they might consider, if we did change it, if there's other ones that they might consider going with rather than.
Right, choosing more of a streamlined option and maybe
Right.
getting rid. Probably not at this point, just because at this point, I won't get too far into litigation, but just to say that at this point, there's been so much of an investment in litigation, it's already been orally argued for the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. I suspect everyone's going to let those cases get tried to a resolution.
Anybody else?
I would just say, obviously, too, with technology increasing and getting better service for our people as well is something that could benefit with what you're talking about too. So, obviously minimize the view of towers, but also provide better service potentially. Absolutely.
else got buy-in with Chris exploring that option?
Yeah, I think it's good. The only other thing I would say is, with additional incentives, would incentivize them to actually not only, drop and flop, but also talking about the higher technology type of tower that may be more expensive. We gave them some other types of incentives, whether, I don't know, but I don't know if there's tax breaks or anything like that, but that would allow them to put, like you said, a high technology tower. It's going to cost them more, but they have the incentive there somewhat. So it's a win-win kind of
Something
situation.
that broadcasts further or does, yeah.
Right.
That's what you get by being able to being able to have a position to negotiate from rather than to negotiate at either an approval or a denial.
Right.
If we're looking at just replacing an existing piece of equipment, now we're, instead of approving or denying, we're talking about where's our negotiating position with a better looking stealth option or a better looking tower.
Right.
I agree.
Good.
Yeah.
I think that's the direction.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to?
One more thing, Mr. Mayor.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I don't want to see two on the agenda.
I know. Councilmember, you emailed me earlier today about a potential option for Commissioner Hausman's CDBG Citizen Advisory Group. Do you want to bring that up to the council and see what the thoughts are? Or do you want to wait?
I want to wait. I
Fair
haven't
enough.
been able to talk with her yet.
Good enough. That's all I
But
have.
she has expressed interest.
Okay.
Do I have next we added, consider motion and second, action to add an executive session to discuss land acquisition.
Actually, tonight, we advertised litigation and personnel based on an email that I've gotten during the meeting. I can eliminate personnel and we'll just do
Litigation.
litigation.
Okay. So do I have a motion I'll move to executive session.
Second.
To discuss litigation. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. David? Yes, we are. Do I have a motion to reconvene the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to reconvene. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, but I don't know how many I get. Did you say aye? Jeanette?
Aye.
That's 4.
Aye. Bert, say aye.
I'll move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Aye.
All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Aye, aye, sir.